Perfect. Well, we're all so happy that you were able to join us today, and we're so happy that we have Rosemary joining us for this really special presentation. If everyone would like to say hello in the chat and let us know where you're joining in from, we'd love to know if you have any fun birds that are joining you this morning and where you guys are all at in the world.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak on lorries, my favourite birds. I'm always delighted to help to educate people on these fantastic birds.
Yes, and we are so honored, Rosemary, for you to be here. It just almost makes my year. I'm so thrilled having been a follower of yours for many, many, many years, and having the pleasure of watching you present around the world and to be with you and listen to you and learn from you. You've got so much that transcends all species of parrots. And it's wonderful that we're focusing on one particular species of birds, the lories, that in some ways are misunderstood and underserved. But the information, the research, and data that you've collected from the collections you've worked with around the world is germane for everyone who loves and cares for parrots. So, for everyone in here that doesn't have a lory or is not familiar with them, you'll see what makes them absolutely so captivating, and think of the depth of knowledge that this will inspire for you with all your own particular birds. I'm turning this over to Kira again and to Rosemary, and I'm along for the ride. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for those very generous words.
Thank you. Oh, there's Mark. Hi, Mark. How nice to see you.
Yay, wonderful. Well, yes, thank you again, Rosemary. We're so excited to have you. And especially right now, we have three really wonderful lorikeets that are in our care. And so it's really important for us, for our community and for our doctors to understand some of the unique and special needs of these birds. And having worked with them for a few months now, they really are a delight, and they're just so full of personality, and their tiny, colorful little bodies. So we're really excited. We had some people reaching out from Australia that were really excited about this webinar, but it is 2 in the morning in Australia right now. So for everybody that is watching, these are recorded webinars. If for whatever reason you have to step away, we have these uploaded to our YouTube channel within the week, and so you'll be able to watch that there. And then other little housekeeping notes. We will save some time at the end of Rosemary's presentation to answer any questions that you may have. So if you want to go ahead and put any questions in the Q&A or in the chat, that's fine. I will be collecting those and kind of filtering through them and then presenting those for Rosemary at the end. Alrighty. Well, I think that that's all that I had. If you wanted to get started, Rosemary.
Well, I'm going to start by asking, why do people keep lorries? And they're usually mesmerized by their fantastic colours and plumage. This is one of my favourite species, one of my birds, the Raja lory, which is a subspecies of the black lory, and the plumage has got such incredible gloss. They're not really black at all. If you see them in sunlight, the multitude of colours in the plumage is quite incredible. So if you unexpectedly find a lory in your care, the first thing you need to do is to find out which species it is. Unfortunately, although I've written 3 books during the past nearly 40 years on lorries, this one the Encyclopedia of the Lories is the only one which is still in print. If you look on the internet, you might find one of the other two, and in this way, you can identify the species that you have. Alternatively, if you've got a copy of Joseph Forshaw's incredibly wonderful The Parrots of the World, the original one, or the identification guide, you will find all the species in there so that you can identify them. Now, there are about 60 species of lories and lorikeets, and they all originate from Australia, and most of them actually come from Indonesian islands and a few from islands in the South Pacific. All the lories in aviculture today should be bred in captivity. Um, Unfortunately, there is still quite an active trade in the illegal export of Indonesian species, and if these are discovered, they will be confiscated by customs and sent either to a zoo or to a rescue centre somewhere. Of the species that are fairly easy to breed in captivity, the rainbow lorikeet and the little goldies here are two of the easiest and two of the most commonly available. I'm not so sure now of the availability of some loris species in the United States, but certainly this applies to Europe. The first question that is often asked is, can loris be kept in cages? As most of you know, they have liquid droppings unless they are fed on pellets, and I really don't recommend that, which I will describe the reasons later. For anyone, and of course for breeders who are able to provide aviaries, they give a much better quality of life than all wire cages because they're such active birds. If a rescue centre receives a lory, if it is not tame, it will probably be unsuitable as a companion bird, and this must be borne in mind because it will be very unhappy if it's closely confined. So ideally, seek out a breeder and his or her contacts and try to find a home where it can be paired up and placed in an aviary. Also, if it's not tame, it definitely needs a companion of its own species. For example, one of the bigger lories, the Juvenbodes, although they're so beautiful and incredibly intelligent, they're really not suitable to be closely confined. They should be in an aviary. This was one of my pairs of this absolutely stunning bird. Um, you have to see the plumage to appreciate in real life just what gorgeous creatures they are. Those of you, and probably not in the majority watching this, who will keep lories in aviaries, you need custom built aviaries made from aluminium because they are easy to keep clean, and wooden ones can be readily destroyed by the larger species. However, if you are going to keep a lory as a companion bird, remember that the usual type of cage you find in a pet store is not really suitable because they're usually higher than they are long. And lorries they're so active, they need to be moving all the time. The ideal thing is to have a cage made that has only the front of mesh and the sides and back of an easily cleaned surface such as melamine faced chipboard. And if you're having one made, include swing feeders. Alternatively, you could buy a plastic breeding cage made for budgerigars, as this will be very easy to keep clean. As I mentioned, the usual parrot cages are not suitable because the liquid feces will be squirted outside the cage onto carpets and floor coverings. It's amazing how far these liquid droppings can travel and make a real mess of your house. So a good idea is to buy a roll of polythene dust sheet and put it over the floor and on nearby walls. And preferably use a cage with feeders that can be changed without opening the door. I say this because lorries have lightning fast reactions, and if you're not aware of this and if you're not careful, they can be out of that door with amazing speed. It's another reason why I recommend swing feeders, because you don't have to open the cage or go inside. You can replenish the food by just swinging out the stainless steel pots. It's a good idea to have three, one for nectar and two for fruit and other items. And the water should be placed separately because if, for example, you had nectar in one and say water in that one, when they're bathing, the nectar is going to get filled with water and that dilutes the nectar. Swing feeders should be placed at perch level, and this prevents the liquid feces from contaminating the food. Have a spare set of feeders so that you can quickly change the food items. And as I mentioned, place the water bowl well away from the food. Also, the other reason for that is because lorries are great bathers and they need a bigger container for water than you can get in a normal sized dish that slots into the swing feeders. This is a good design for nectar and other items because it's set into plastic and the area around the food dishes will quickly become sticky with nectar and fruit and of course the wire mesh as well. But this area will be easy to clean. Hygiene in lorry cages is extremely important. I think it's easiest to use newspaper on the floor and change it daily. The perches are also liable to become sticky, so they will need to be cleaned every day. I prefer to use washing up liquid and hot water to clean the cage, not disinfectant, because lorries lick at every surface and some of the disinfectants might not be very good for them. The food pots must be changed or washed every day. That's vitally important with lorries. For those with aviaries and indoor sections, um, this setup is very practical. There's a hose there. You can hose down the floors and the walls, which are easy to clean, and it has a sloping floor with a drain. In aviaries, it must be admitted that it's quite hard work to keep aviaries clean unless you have a pressure washer. And that is the answer because um, it's really the only practical and efficient way of getting nectar and fruit off wire mesh. I've always used aviaries with gravel on the floor, and this is again easily the gravel can be cleaned with a pressure washer. Whereas if you have concrete floors, um, it's a less pleasant surface and you can't grow weeds and plants in it. And lawyers absolutely love to go down and nibble at, even if it's only grass or dandelions, they really enjoy that. I mentioned the lightning fast reactions of lawyers, which means wherever they are housed, if it's indoors or out, you need a double door. There are too many escapes of companion parrots and even aviary birds. This is an absolute vital necessity. In aviaries, you need a service passage so that if the lorry comes shooting out and you keep a net in the passage, you can quickly get the bird and put it back where it belongs. It does help to have the door not the full height and a perch above it because then the lorries hopefully are more likely to fly to the perch and not to the door. In an aviary and where possible in a decent sized cage, um, they need things to keep them occupied. Swings are ideal. Most lorries just love them. Or even this kind of toy, and two or three of them in a row that they can play on. They're incredibly playful birds, and you really see them at their best when they're playing. You definitely need to know how loud lory species are because the little ones are quiet, but the bigger ones, such as juveniles, are really loud and quite harsh with it. So think about that if you're going to keep one indoors. So here are two of the quietest species. They're really cute little birds, not much bigger than a budgie, and they're not noisy. Of all the lory species available, the rainbow lorikeets and the green-naped um, are the most popular and the most readily available, and also the easiest to breed. So you're more likely to find that these might be relinquished to a rescue centre than the rarer species. The green-naped, it's very much like the rainbow, but you can see the difference here in the breast markings and in the colour of the nape, which is more yellow in the rainbow. I mentioned their playfulness, and whenever you see these birds playing, you have to smile. They are so funny, and they will play for hours in the right circumstances. That's why they need a flat, solid surface. Yes, they get up in the most amazing poses when they're playing about. Swings, very simple to make. Just get some chain and a bit of perching and hang from the aviary roof. And here also I have swinging baths, which they absolutely love, and they should be quite deep because they can soon bathe away that depth of water. Lorries love to have fresh cut branches from which they will gnaw the bark and release the sap, then anoint the plumage with it. And you can see here this one biting on, I think it was apple, and then it immediately anoints its feathers with the sap from the branch. Although my lorries have had rope toys and swings, and I haven't had any problem, you have to be careful. Australian vets especially gave out a warning about the number of bird lorikeets they saw in their practices that had compacted crops due to ingesting little fibres of rope. So if there are any loose ends, always cut them off. Plants in lorry aviaries, whether they survive or not depends a lot on the individual birds and on the species, and also as well on the plants. For example, this is a fig tree, and most lorries won't bite it. They do not like fig because it has quite an unpleasant sap. So although it's not harmful to them, they just leave it alone. This was a passion flower vine in one of my aviaries, which actually lasted for about 4 years until they over pruned it. But if you can grow plants inside, it adds greatly to the quality of their lives. Or if you don't want good plants that are easily destroyed, just get some elder and put it in pots or bamboo and encourage. Well, I didn't need to encourage weeds to grow on the ground. I found that they just grew there, and even moss in one case. I've also mentioned a hanging bath, which should be quite wide or deep, and they absolutely love these. They treat them like playthings as well as baths. And they will bathe every day, and if even in a cold climate in outdoor aviaries, they will still bathe. Tomatoes growing in and outside the cage, or vines growing over the roof. Such vines are really useful actually, because they help to shield aviaries from predators such as hawks or even cats. So what do our lawyers need? Um, they definitely need a stress-free environment. Now, this red lorry, when I received him, he was in this state. I guessed that he'd plucked himself for years and that the feather follicles had been destroyed. So he never grew any new feathers, just down. And this must have been to some stressful circumstances in a previous home. But you can see from the depth of red of his beak that he was otherwise healthy. Now, some lories have black beaks, but those with red or orange beaks, the bill colour is a really good indication of how healthy they are, and it's a nice deep colour. Other causes of stress: a cage which is too small so that they can't fly, a dominant or aggressive companion, periods without food, that's really important, incorrect diet, large or aggressive birds in joining aviaries or close by, or hawks. They can cause a lot of stress. Or even unsympathetic carers that don't really understand their needs. One of the biggest dangers for lorries, and I've seen it in zoos, and unfortunately I took this photo in a famous American zoo that housed a number of different lorry species in the same aviary. I actually watched this poor bird being attacked, and I went to try and find a keeper. You must never house different adult lorries in the same aviary, especially if there are several individuals of one bird, of one species, and just one bird at another, because the chances of being attacked are very high. And they can kill, and they can kill quickly. Those of you who have been to Loro Park in Tenerife will have seen a number of different species in one aviary, but I'd like to point out that they're all young birds and they are changed up for more young birds as soon as they become mature. Another cause of stress: nails that grow too long, and they could hook the birds up on wire mesh, and this is really something to watch out for. And if the nails are very long and real in the bigger species, it might be better to have an avian vet cut them. Also the beak. Do trust avian vets, because some vets in small animal practice have cut the nails of parrots with absolutely disastrous results, because they don't realise that the vein comes nearly to the end. If they cut into the vein, then they will find it bleeds, and it bleeds a lot. Ah, sorry. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. And I'm trying to go back.
Rosemary, are you able to use your keys on your keyboard to go back? Or you can also hit previous.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Right. Um, Now, how do you know if a lorry is in good health? It should have really glossy, smooth, beautiful plumage, and it can only do that if it has regular bathing facilities. It's very important because the dart is sticky and the plumage could still get in a mess if it doesn't have access to water. It could even be that it tries to bathe in nectar if it doesn't have a good bath. Now, most lories feed primarily on pollen and nectar from flowers and trees, but they don't all take the same kind of foods in captivity. The dietary needs does vary according to the species, which is another reason why you need to know which species you've got. If we take the Chalcocita lories, such as the yellow streaked and Juvenbodes, you will see that they have a really long tongue with well-developed brushes on the end. And these little brushes are to gather pollen and nectar from flowers. If you have a species with this kind of tongue, you know that it is a primarily nectar-feeding species. In complete contrast is the Aris lorikeet, which is almost unique among the lorikeets in that it has such short brushes. It's they're hardly visible. And these species are fed more like a parakeet than a nectar. It will take some nectar, but it's not as dependent on nectar as other species. The red-collared and the rainbow lorikeets are more omnivorous. I mean, they drink a lot of nectar, but not as reliant on nectar as the Chalcocita species, like the Juvenbode, for example. So in captivity, they will take a wider range of foods. It's always sometimes said that you shouldn't give seeds to lorikeets. In fact, some species do feed on tiny seeds in the wild. In fact, I was lucky enough to go to the island of Attu in the Cook Islands in the Pacific and to see one of the most beautiful of all the little lorries, the Coors lorry. And you can see here the little casuarina fruits, which are full of seed, and they do eat the seeds in that. I'm a curator at Palmitos Park in Gran Canaria. We had green nape lorikeets flying free, and they would feed on those same small seeds in the fruits of the casuarinas. Also in Australia, the rainbow lorikeets feed on the seeds of grass trees. And these species that do eat some small seeds also enjoy millet sprays. Lorikeet darts, a lot has been written about them, and the most important thing to remember is that their digestive system is designed for the rapid passage of liquid food, and therefore foods containing complex carbohydrates such as seed, refer more to, say, sunflower seed, and to pellets are not suitable for lorikeets. Another point that was made after examining a lot of different lorikeet foods was that some lack adequate levels of vitamins, minerals, and essential amino acids. But the ingredients they contain should be listed on the packet. The recommended nutritional analysis for most lorries is about 11 to 13% protein and only 4 to 6% fat. look for this paper online and find out more about the science behind these conclusions. So this is the paper by Gordon Rich, is a scientist, and you can easily find the paper online and go into detail about the different range of sugars found in nectar. Now, quite a lot of Lloyd products have been marketed by people with probably without the qualifications to put them on the market, and some are extremely harmful to some species. For trichoglossus, such as rainbow lorikeets, for example, they will survive on almost anything. But for um, other species, especially the chalcocita and the charmosinas, such as stellas, a wrong dart will kill them, and it will kill them quite quickly. And you can see signs of this in the plumage. For example, this lovely black-winged lory that came to me, I could see she had been really badly fed in the past. You can see these patches of sort of brownish yellow plumage, and that indicates that the dart has been incorrect. I don't know exactly which lorry products are available in the United States. I do know that Avico lorry food is available. Now, this was formulated and sold by Dick Schroeder. He was, or still is, a major lorry breeder for more than 30 years. So you can be absolutely certain that his food was properly formulated. Necton lorry, to me, is the very best product on the market, but I think it's very difficult to get hold of in the United States, or there's a lot of problems in importing it, and it is expensive. It's more expensive, but believe me, for people in countries, Europe mainly, who can get this German product easily, it's far and away the best product. You want your birds to live for a long time and to breed well. I can remember a lorry breeder telling me about his excellent collection of really nice lorry species and complaining that they weren't breeding. When I asked him what he was feeding them on, the nectar product, it was immediately obvious to me that it was a very poor product. And I recommended he change to Necton. And about 6 months later, I had an email from him. All his birds had started to breed. So I cannot emphasize enough that the correct product for longevity and for breeding is of the utmost importance. If you're suddenly presented with a lorry and without any appropriate lorry food, what you do, it's quite simple. You can tide yourself over by getting some baby cereal and making up a mixture with warm water and cereal and honey, and that will be readily accepted. But it shouldn't be too thick. It's not like a, cereal, a thick cereal, but a fairly thin mixture. This is also extremely important. All lorries should be fed at least twice daily. Now, I was lucky because I work from home and I could feed my lorries 3 times daily. So not many people can do that. But boy, do they love their food and they love fresh made nectar. And my birds were never, ever without nectar in front of them. And this is important because unlike other parrots, lorries need to feed throughout the day because their digestion is so rapid. And whereas most parrots in the wild will have two main feeding sessions, early morning and late afternoon, lorries will feed throughout the day. And in cages and aviaries, they need to have their liquid food in front of them at all times. I've noticed, especially in some zoos, they don't do this, and you see lorries fill their crops until they're absolutely bulging. And this is always a sign to me that they're not fed often enough or they don't have enough nectar because they think they don't know when the next lorry feed is coming, so they consume as much as possible. If your lorries are regularly fed, they do not do this. Vegetables, all the usual ones can be given. Most lorries love celery, but it must be crisp, and the best way is just to wedge it into the mesh or the bars of the cage. Cooked sweet potato, that's good for its vitamin A content, the same with carrot, um, raw or parboiled. Fruits, all the usual fruits can be given. Um, Papaya is excellent, um, especially as a rearing food. If you have to rear chicks, liquidize papaya with the rearing food. A lot of people feed fruits to all kinds of parrots by chopping them up and placing the mixture in a dish. I've never done this. I don't like to do it. It often just results in a sticky mess. I prefer to put them on a stainless steel fruit holder so that the birds have to forage for them. I should mention the favourite fruit of all lorries is pomegranate, or I should say these are Spanish pomegranates. Some of the others are grown for juice and they're not so well favoured. They're darker red and they're not as sweet. I don't know if you can get Spanish pomegranates in the United States, but in warmer climates you can probably grow your own. This is how I like to provide fruit on a holder. The birds have to reach up and work for it, not take it out of a dish. It also prevents wastage, and it's just a more natural way of feeding them. You can also offer soaked dried fruits, such as sultanas and figs, if they're very soft. As a treat, they love a little bit of Madeira cake. They really enjoy that. Um, Moistened seeded batch bread, or either just moistened or even dipped in the nectar, is also enjoyed. But the most valuable food that you can give your lorries is actually pollen because it has the proteins in pollen are absolutely perfect. That bee pollen, you can buy it. Some of the lorikeets really need a lot of green food, and I think most of them don't get it. Like stellas and goldies, like the weeds that you might be able to pick from your garden, chickweed and dandelion, are especially valuable. I've already mentioned how important it is to feed stellas and the other small Carmesina lorikeets, such as the pleasing, correctly with the correct nectar mixture. But they also take a wide variety of fruits and green foods. Um, I always picked these items in my garden to give to the goldies, and they absolutely loved anything green, such as this dock or flowers growing in the garden or just seeding grasses. Most lorries and lorikeets are not sexually dimorphic, but with the Carmesina lorries, of which we usually only see two in captivity, the red-flanked or pleasing and the stellas, they are sexually dimorphic, and male and female are easily distinguished. And these species need a thinner nectar mixture than the larger lorries. There are a lot of seasonable items that are really good for your birds. Dandelion especially, because it has a very high pollen content. I know some people don't like picking them from roadsides. I have to say that all my life, for more than probably 60 years, I've picked dandelions from roadsides and I've never had any problem. They're such an important item. You can give great handfuls of them to lorries and they will take the pollen from all of them. Or growing in your garden, you might have apple trees or honeysuckle or elder, and they enjoy any kind of blossom. It's the most natural food you can give them. In late summer and autumn, dock will be seeding, and this is a very valuable seed. All kinds of parrots absolutely love it. This is dock in the green stage, being enjoyed here by stellas. And then from green, it goes to this light brown, and then it goes, when it's really ripe, the seeds are ripe, it turns a deeper brown. Any stage, it's eagerly consumed by nearly all parrots. Small lorikeets also like seeding grasses. I can't emphasize enough how good dandelion flowers are, and the leaves. I'm guessing there are not many people watching who are actually breeders, so I'll just go through this quickly. Don't buy pairs from birds, buy young birds. That applies actually with any parrots that you're breeding. Start off with young birds from unrelated sources. Beginners start with an easy species such as rainbow and goldies. Now here's sweet little goldies chick. They're so cute at this stage. Sexing, generally considered not to be sexually dimorphic, but you can see the difference really. The size of the head and beak in the male is larger, and if you look down on them from above, you can see that the male is broader in the body and in the beak. Sexing often easier just after fledging. You can see he's more colourful and he's got a bigger head. Sexy stellas, different rump colour. yellow in the female, and this is the two colour phases. They're not mutations. They're colour phases found naturally in the wild of stellas. This is the melanistic phase, which is found higher up in the mountains of New Guinea, and the normal phase is green. Just common sense, really. An aviary for a pair needs to be at least 15 foot long. If you can't position an outdoor flight against a birdhouse or even your own house, you can make a little wild tunnel and they will readily use that. Nest boxes, nest litter has to be changed often, so you can make a design where you have a drawer that pulls out for a quick change of nest litter. Nest box inside in colder climates, outside when it's warmer. Parent reared chicks, much better for the parents to rear their young. The only disadvantage is they're quite often plucked by their parents in the nest, but they don't pluck the flight or the tail, they generally pluck the head or the breast, and these feathers soon grow again when they fledge. Problems, egg breaking, quite a common problem, lack of calcium in the shell, insufficient nest litter, incompatible pair, just inexperience with a pair that's too young, incorrect nest box design. Therefore, if you're a serious lorry breeder, you can install nest box cameras and find out what is going on in the nest. A lot of species will breed continuously, such as the rainbow lorikeet, but you shouldn't let them have more than 2 nests of young. Some are seasonal breeders, such as the dusky. The larger lorries mature at 3 to 4 years, the small ones as early as 12 months. It's very important to test your birds for cytosine beak and feather disease, which unfortunately is all too common in lorries. So that is something to be aware of. To breed them, obviously a good dart and no disturbance, and a compatible pair. It makes such a difference. You can sometimes put birds together and they are instantly compatible, such as these two black wings. It's amazing to see, but that doesn't always happen. Rearing foods provide different foods to normal diets. Important factor, how long do they live? He was with me for 38 years and then he suffered very badly from arthritis and he could no longer perch, and in the end I had to have him put to sleep, which was really sad. He was such a tame and lovely bird. Devote Laurie, his mother was at least 30 years old. She was a wild caught bird, so I don't know how old she was, but I got her in October 1978 and she died in 2007. Actually died when he was in the nest. So you can see that they have a long breeding span. This Goldies, during this period, he reared 32 chicks. He wasn't with me, so I don't know how long he went on breeding, but even these little ones live into their, at least into their mid-20s if they are correctly looked after. This RS lorikeet, one of mine, hatched in 1991. He wasn't with me when he died, but he did live to about 25. Liver disease, unfortunately, is a common cause of death. Um, Often it's connected to a poor diet, or it might be due to higher levels of iron that are not tolerated in the diet. Um, and Stacey Gellis, an Australian vet who's also a very experienced lorry keeper, he's found on post-mortem that many died of septicemia after long-term liver disease, and usually it was sudden death. Iron storage disease is just something to be aware of. Um, it's the same problem that you can find in toucans, actually. Reproductive diseases that you might find in any parrot. However, Stacey did say we are doing something not quite right with these birds. They persist in aviculture despite our husbandry, not because of it. In other words, we still have a lot to learn about the correct way to keep and feed lorries. If you are a breeder, please ring your chicks. It's so important that the information on the ring, who bred them, and which year they were hatched stays with them during their life. Also, if you're a breeder, please do not hybridize. They can hybridize quite easily, and we are losing so many species of lorries in aviculture, and this problem will become even worse if hybridizing occurs. So, thank you for your attention, and I'll be very pleased to answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Rosemary. That was an incredible presentation and just so much information that a lot of us just don't know. We don't have a lot of experience with lorries. And so I definitely learned a lot today. Julie, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. A number of years ago, we received a big collection of lorries from a hoarding cruelty case, and I think we got in maybe it was 35 or 40 lorries. One of
Wow.
our entire rooms was filled up with lorries, and there was such a wide diversity. And this particular breeder had one time been a president of a lorry club. At one time, she did a great job with her lorries. By the time the birds were seized and placed with us, they were getting a cocktail. Their food was tinned fruit cocktail and Caro syrup, which how any of them even survive that is beyond me. Um, and we have seen, as you have in the UK, many of the really terrific quality nutrition providers with lessening, at least in the United States, of lorry collections. There, the demand for quality lorry food isn't necessarily there. Um, One of the biggest things in in American zoos, and I'm not certain this happens in the UK. It may happen at Laurel Park, but I just don't remember. Are to have aviaries where people can go in and feed the lorries. People love
Yeah.
it. The lorries are landing on their caps, taking pictures, eating food, and doing all of that. Um, um, have you, Rosemary, ever seen a flock that has been overfed nectar?
You mean, are you referring to the ones in zoos?
Yes, I am. Uh-huh.
Right. Well, no, because
Okay.
generally what happens in a zoo is they don't feed them nectar before the public come in. So that means they are very willing to take the nectar that is offered by members of the public.
Okay. And that makes
And
sense.
yeah,
I well,
I haven't,
pardon me, I'm sorry.
no, I haven't seen them overfed.
Okay. While you were talking, I did do a quick search, and Necton is available in the United States through Amazon.com and a couple of other specialty bird stores, which is just wonderful. I wanted to ask you, a lot of our lorries really enjoy passion fruit. Um, and in your opinion, is that an okay um, food item
Sorry,
to
which
offer?
birds?
The lorries, they love passion fruit. Many of
They
the
love.
lorries really enjoy passion fruit.
Oh, passion fruit. Oh, yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't give it. No.
Okay, okay.
Almost all tropical fruits are suitable.
So guava,
Oh, yes,
mango,
guava.
papaya. All
Yeah,
right.
guava and mango they love. Yeah.
And what about dragon fruit? And what about beets?
What about
Beetroot. What about
beetroot?
beetroot? Yes.
Oh, there's no reason why you shouldn't give it, but in my experience, lawyers probably won't eat it. I know
Okay.
a lot of the bigger parrots will, but yeah, you can give it to them, but you'll probably find they won't eat it.
Okay.
They prefer
My
sweet things.
All right. I've got a couple of other questions. Um, and I'm so delighted that you brought up dandelions. I like to joke with visitors that our dandelions are gluten-free, pesticide-free, vegan, vegetarian, and organically grown because we keep all of the dandelions that we grow. We use the greens for the fresh food chop. And in addition to Lori's loving those blossoms, many of the cockatoos like taking away, pulling out the petals of each of the dandelion flowers. We've got honeysuckle that we feed here. We're a lot higher in elevation than you are. We're at about 6,700 feet in altitude where we are, and so the kinds and high plains grasslands is our physical terrain. So we're very fortunate to have lots of different grasses that grow, and I'm certainly going to take a look at some of the Latin names of the plants that you've mentioned to see what we call them in the States. I wondered though, when you are feeding the lorries bee pollen, if you could explain a little bit more about how to do that. That is not something we have done in the past. I think it makes good sense. I wonder how, I wonder if we have to worry about any contamination with the bee pollen and how it's gathered or produced. And the second part is, in this presentation, you mentioned the amount of proteins that Lori should be receiving in their diets. And that bee pollen, I was so surprised to see the protein levels at 34%. I wonder if you could elaborate on what other foods that you've utilized as well that have a higher protein content.
Okay, your first question was about bee pollen.
Correct.
Um, well, there are reputable health food companies selling bee pollen. And I mean, as far as I've used bee pollen, a lot of breeders do it. It's quite important because some of its nutrients are not to be found elsewhere. As regards contamination, I really couldn't comment on that. I've never
Okay.
heard of anyone having problems through using bee pollen. The other thing is protein content of foods. Uh, yeah, well, again, different species seem to have different requirements. For example, the red lorry that is on the screen now, um, a lot of breeders have found that to induce them to breed, they need a higher protein content and, shall we say, rainbow lorikeets. But there's so much to discover. People are not really doing research on this subject. I'm really none the wiser. I mean, it's just a question of seeing what your birds thrive and breed on, and always bearing in mind that they might be protein deficient. So, what foods can you give? Well, there are a lot of proprietary egg foods that are made for parrots, which, of course, have a high protein content. And also, some of them also have insects in them. Now, we know that in the wild, um, some lorries and many other parrots do take insects, especially when they're breeding. So, to increase the protein content, if you want to increase it for breeding birds, it would be a good idea to buy one of these egg products with insects in them.
Thank you. And I'd like to remind our participants today that the dandelions aren't just for lorries. We find them readily enjoyed by all of the parrots that reside with us. They're wonderful and they're a terrific food for the birds to forage with as well. All of those little yellow flowers. It gives them time to hold and to manipulate, and it's so much fun to watch the lorries go after them. It really, really, really is.
Yeah, I should say that most people don't realize that nearly all species of parrots feed on flowers, not just lories and lorikeets. They are a very important part of the diet of many species. Is take the small conures, such as the green cheek, that absolutely love flowers, and how many people give them flowers. Or, I think macaws wouldn't be so keen on flowers, but nearly all the small and medium-sized parrots really benefit from being offered flowers for environmental enrichment and for dietary purposes. I cannot emphasize that enough because most people just don't give their parrots flowers. And as you know, they're very readily taken, even if they're only shredded. I don't
Mhm.
care. They enjoy having them.
Yes, and we find that too. We offer nasturtium flowers, of course, the dandelion,
Yeah, nasturtium is a good
marigolds,
one.
and
Yeah,
cornflowers, and wild rose petals.
yeah.
We also save the rose hips and feed those in fall. Um, and I think this would make a wonderful article for our parrot lovers as well as our lorry lovers to realize what they have growing in their own yard, or can set up a beautiful flower pot garden for the benefit of their birds.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many valuable things. If you're fortunate enough to have a fairly big backyard, you can just go out and pick a number of items. They're fresh and you know that they're not contaminated in any way. Um, some people are nervous of doing that because have they think they might have been contaminated with feces from wild birds. But you can see if they have been, and if you're afraid of that, but I don't recommend washing them because you're going to wash the pollen out.
Okay.
you'll see if they've been contaminated by wild birds.
That's great information about not washing them.
And nasturtium is a wonderful flower because it's so easy to grow. You can soon have them all over your garden, grown from
Yes.
seed.
And do you have a particular favorite when we're talking about feeding dark leafy greens, such as the dandelion greens, about any other more readily available greens like Swiss chard or turnip greens or radish greens or beet greens? Do you have any recommendations on that?
I must say, uh, the only one I've fed is spinach beet.
Okay.
I've never fed things like cabbage because I think they would play with it, but I'm not sure how much nutrition. I mean, generally speaking, dark green leaves are more nutritious.
We
Yes.
have one question here, just asking about other vegetables and mixed greens that they might enjoy. And then I have kind of a secondary question to that. Um, since iron storage disease is so common in lorikeets, and a lot of the darker leafy greens are higher in iron, do you ever worry about feeding too much of those items?
Yeah,
And
that's a good question. Um, I think that you would have to feed a lot. I mean, most people are only going to give them perhaps one leaf a day. They're not going to be feeding greens in big quantities. So I don't think that that would be a contributing factor to iron storage disease in many cases. You do have to be careful about the iron content of different nectar products.
Mhm. And kind of another secondary question to that, more in relation to fatty liver disease. We have previously used milk thistle supplements with our birds that were struggling with liver issues. Is that something that you commonly see used with lorikeets as well?
What sort of supplements?
We use it's a milk thistle supplement. It's like a
Oh,
liquid milk thistle that we use.
oh yeah, well that is good for the liver.
Mhm.
So yes, if you suspect liver disease in a lorry, that would be a good product to use.
And is milk thistle something that you could also feed? Julie, would you know a little bit more about this of like the flowers or the leaves of
Yes, you
milk
can.
thistle?
And yeah, and the Latin for milk thistle is Silybum marianum, and it's belongs to the daisy or aster family actually.
Interesting.
And in many cultures, it's used as a natural herb for humans, but it also um, works very, very well on parrots as well as lories, which we our veterinarians call it silymarin. So it can be really, really helpful. I think that like with toucans and arisaries and some of the other species, iron storage disease um, in these particular species of birds can be really prevalent. And I think as Rosemary brought up, not all nectars are created equally. And
Mhm.
I don't know, even in the pelletized foods that are marketed for lorries, I haven't taken a look at the iron content in those products, which makes feeding a fresh diet even more important with the best quality nectar that one could get. Um, um, so I think that if one should use milk thistle, number one, they should really understand why, because because something could be good, potentially good for a bird, doesn't mean it is good. And we have to know what physical health we're starting with that bird anyway. And Rosemary, we provide wonderful veterinary care for our flock. We keep current histories, blood chemistries. Um, we like to know the overall physical health of our flock, and certainly as some of our birds are in their senior or even geriatric stage, we see many things come down the line, such as pulmonary hypertension and cardiovascular disease, and hence arthritis, a number of these conditions. So when you have a bird like a lory, or people crave having toucans as well, or mynah birds, or some of the other birds that are notorious for iron storage disease, it really is important, and I hope you would agree with this, to make certain that we keep our birds in the best of health, and that probably every 3 or so years, at least for mature birds, that we should really be considering wellness exams for those birds.
Yeah, something else that I could mention. Um, just as in humans, all parrots, including lories, will suffer from arthritis when they get older. Hopefully, they do get older.
Yes.
Um, and one of my lories, which was suffering from, she was well into her 20s with arthritis in her feet. And when I gave her um, the bark of willow, she would uh, strip it, absolutely strip it. And apparently, there is something equivalent to aspirin in willow. And I had the impression that she felt less pain in her feet when she had willow and could strip the bark. I don't know, I could be wrong, but uh, as you say, natural foods, the answer is often there. And you mentioned milk thistle. I think it's what we call sow thistle.
Okay.
And there are two kinds, like the smooth sow thistle and the prickly sow thistle. The smooth sow thistle often grew in my garden. Flowers, leaves, lorries love it.
Yeah, in our experience, our flock does really like branches and limbs of the willow tree. Um, and when we have someone that has those trees growing, we are always asking for donations of branches of the willow. And
Yes.
many of the indigenous Americans, the Native Americans, used willow and willow bark historically for its medicinal purposes. Um, so that's a wonderful suggestion.
Yes, willow, I assume it's fairly easy to obtain, and it's easy to cut as well. It's not a
Mhm.
hard wood.
One of the
We had
things,
one. Oh, sorry, Joy. We just had one question that popped up in regards to the willow. Is this including like a weeping willow tree?
Yeah, that's just the same,
No.
just as good, yes.
Wonderful.
hi Jillian, it's wonderful to see your name there. Thank you for popping in. Um, uh, the times that I've been in Australia, and I've been into Papua New Guinea, I've been to a number of places where the lories are wild. I see the lorikeets also feeding on the eucalyptus flowers. Have you any experience with that? Did you utilize those in Laurel Park or anything like that?
Um, well, I don't think the flowering eucalypts would flower in our climate in the
Okay,
UK. But of course, in Australia, um, it's where you're most likely to see lorikeets in flowering eucalypts
okay,
because a lot of them, that is a primary food source, like the musk lorikeet. They couldn't breed without, I think it's the yellow box eucalypt. So
okay.
it's it is extremely important. And if you live in an area where you're lucky enough to have eucalyptus trees flowering, obviously it's the ideal and the most natural food.
We had some more questions in relation to plants, specifically ones that can be included in an aviary or a larger cage. And this question came from Margaret, and she's in Bath, Ontario. And I looked up the gardening zone of Ontario, and it matches up with the gardening zone of Colorado, specifically where we're at. We're both in zone 6A. So I figured, Julie, this could be a good question for you to chime in as well, of just some of the plants that you have, like especially around your house. I know you have the beautiful honeysuckle. We have clematis here, which Rosemary had mentioned, and we saw in some of her aviaries. Do you ladies have any other recommendations for plants that could specifically grow well that are good for the lorries in kind of our climate here?
Can you grow bottle brush?
In California, yes, but not in Colorado.
Yes.
But you can buy fresh eucalypt and bottle brush that it will be shipped from California if you have a small collection and you want to utilize that. We also plant in summertime, we plant hibiscus bushes.
Oh
And
yeah,
our
hibiscus.
lorries go
Oh
crazy for the
yeah,
hibiscus.
of course. Hibiscus, another natural food, bottle brush in Australia. They feed widely on it. In my experience, bottle brush is not hardy. So I think it would depend which climate you are in.
We also have a lot of wild roses blooming in the summer, and we keep them pristine. They've got the pollen. We have a large number of pollinators where we live. We have butterflies and we have lots of hummingbirds. We have bats. We have all of those things, which is really
You're
wonderful
so
this time of year.
lucky.
Yeah, but then we have to put up with the snow and ice in winter.
Oh, that's true.
So, so those pollinating things that you would offer for pollinators, such as milkweed, or we love to use the Russian sage. We use butterfly bush, and I'm sure, Marg, that
Lucky, I
those are available up in your area, and they are safe for our birds. And it's not just the lories and the littles who love them. A lot of the parrots just enjoy interacting with them, and it adds such enrichment. We also have wild sorghum and wild milo that grow here
well,
in our area, and we can pick those stems and stalks and
that would be
toss
marvelous.
them in.
Yeah, the small seeds would be.
Yes.
Uh,
And it gives
it,
them a job. One of the things that you've so beautifully emphasized is how charismatic and playful lorries can be. And you having lived with so many, you've experienced 100%. I don't think people who have never really spent time in the wild watching lorries or even visiting someone with a large or a medium lorry collection realizes that those little guys will get on the ground and they'll tumble around and
oh
chase
yes, yeah.
and and
They're so playful. If they
Yes,
have the space, the problem is
yes,
in a small cage, they can't play.
yes. And it's so important. And in regard to your description of them as such skilled flyers, they absolutely are. So caution is important. So are those double doors, those little entry doors.
It was really funny listening to Rosemary's experience in working with all of these because I also didn't realize that we had had such a large intake of lorries previously. I think that was before I had started. And working with the three lorries that we have now is really my first time working with them more consistently.
Which
And
species are they?
so they're rainbows, and I think are they green naped? Or
Yeah, they're the green nate.
we
Uh-huh.
have one Swanson's.
Yeah.
Lori,
Oh,
and then the other two
rainbow.
are
Yeah.
the green name. But yes, I quickly learned that they will bolt out of the food door if I left it open. They
Yeah.
jump around on everybody's cages in the morning and evade me, and so then I have to use their nectar bowls to try to convince them to step up on their nectar bowl to go in their cage. But I made that mistake once and then not again because they so quickly went out and then we're just jumping around and saying haha to everybody else. So it was very much my experience in working with them for the first time. Let's see. And then I had one kind of more niche question. Rosemary, when you were talking about how they would peel back the bark and use the sap to anoint their plumage, I found that to be so interesting. I wasn't sure, like, do they not have uropygeal glands that they're using to preen their feathers, or is there any specific function of using the sap on their feathers specifically?
Well, that's a good question, but obviously the constituent of sap from willow, for example, is totally different to what comes out of a parrot's preen gland,
Hmm.
and they go for it. They're mad for it. So they seem to know instinctively what to do with it.
Interesting.
Yes. Does it make like the feathers more glossy maybe or provide some sort of maybe like antibacterial protection or have they done any studies to show like what the function is specifically?
I don't know. No.
A lot of the behaviors we see is kind of a mystery sometimes, but I just found that to be so interesting. Yay. Well, let's see.
What about, I have sort of a little bit of a depressing question, which I don't mean it to be in that regard. What about the trafficking of lorries out of these Pacific Island and Eastern
From
Asian
Indonesia,
areas?
not the Pacific Islands.
Okay,
Yeah,
Indonesia.
I have a whole PowerPoint presentation on Indonesian lorries trapped to extinction. I've got a whole presentation just on that subject. If you want it
Encouraging.
for your website, you're welcome.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that the more people know, the more
Yeah.
they can share. And
Yeah,
it's
I think people would be shocked if they knew that some loris species and subspecies have already been trapped to extinction because a lot of the Indonesian species are found only on very small islands. So I would be delighted if you want to use that presentation on your website, or even if you want me to give another presentation on
we
that
are,
subject.
and that would be awesome. And we will absolutely take you up on that because conservation is an important near and dear to all of us.
People
And
don't realise
right,
they have a bird like a Fawson's lorikeet virtually extinct in the wild. So it's very important to keep the subspecies pure in captivity, the subspecies of the green-naped lorikeet. Um, uh, don't start me on that because I'll
yes.
be here for another hour.
Well, I have kind of a personal question to ask you. And that is in your storied career in aviculture, as an author, as a parrot lover, and as all those different roles. You've traveled wildly around the world and have had the opportunity to see so many species in the wild. If someone were going to say, I want to go on a bucket list trip and I want to visit 3 countries where parrots or lories or other cetacean and related species live, where should I go? Is there something that you feel that is the most amazing and inspirational place you've ever been, or that where you've learned more than others?
Well, you mentioned you've been to New Guinea.
Yes.
Well, I've been to New Guinea too.
Did I
And,
meet you in the Highlands? No. I
and
remember all those masks and the headdresses with the lorry feathers. And I was
yes,
like,
yes.
oh my God.
Well, it is amazing. I mean, people can go to Australia and see different bird species, but you have a wider range of species in New Guinea, and it's more difficult, it's more expensive, but to see them in the mountains and in various habitats is really an amazing experience. It's easy to see them in Australia. There's no challenge there. But if you want a bit of a challenge, go to New Guinea.
Yeah. And seeing birds in the wild, I think for me, it always makes me cry because it's so beautiful and they're so free.
Or if you really want an amazing experience, go to the Cook Islands and go to um, Aitutaki and see the little blue lories, and go to um, Attu and see the wonderful little lorry that is endemic to that island. That is probably the most beautiful bird I ever saw anywhere in the wild. Or go to Fiji and see the incredibly beautiful collared lorry. All those 3 places, it's easy to see them because they're small islands and you can't miss them.
Mm, that's wonderful.
Julie, will
If
you
you've got
tell
the
us?
money, expensive places.
Julie, will you tell us your story about was it when you were in Australia and all of the lorries were landing on the roof? Um,
Oh no, those were cockatoos.
oh
I
dang.
was in the outback and I was in the Blue Mountains and there were a few of us friends and we were traveling, doing a lot of outback traveling. And we were in this little tiny quaint town, and all the buildings had tin roofs. So if it rained or if it hailed, the noise was deafening. And we were having a coffee one afternoon, and they said, "Oh, you think that the rain is loud? You should hear it when the cockatoos come in." And we're all like, "Okay, we want to be here for that. What's the deal?" And they said, well, at 4 o'clock, when we're getting ready to close up the coffee bar and the shop, we put out all the remaining pastries and goods that we have, and we put them around the building and everywhere, and the birds know and they come on in. Well, those birds were far wiser than the people because those birds started lining up at about 3:30, waiting for the humans to put
I
out
don't
all
doubt
three.
it.
And the noise was deafening, but it was so wonderful. You can't help but giggle and enjoy watching that, where we see these behaviors in captivity, and you automatically feel like you know these birds because they're behaving many of the same ways that our own parrots are behaving. And it's for that moment, it's like the wild and the captive merge to give you an idea of what could be. And when you've seen that in the wild, it's never going to be enough to just see how birds are kept in captivity. Yes, we can do what we strive, and your efforts, Rosemary, for educating people for more than 3 decades are so important. And for those of you who are participating in this webinar, if we can bridge that gap between what's wild and what's free, we will all absolutely make lives better for every single parrot. And I think that that is the beauty of scholars and aviculturists like Rosemary, who bring a half a century of admiration and experience to the table to share this wisdom with all of us. And for those of you that are here that are a lot younger than me or a lot younger than Rosemary, because we're probably right up there, um, you pick up the torch and carry it forward. So these stories don't just become stories, they still get to live on and be a part of someone's experience. And I think that that is absolutely one of the most generous gifts, Rosemary, that you can give us by sharing that history and by helping people feel inspired by those birds that have opened up their lives and what they're capable of doing.
Well, I've always tried to link aviculturist with conservation and with seeing parrots in the wild. As you've already said, it is so important for people to have a proper understanding of what parrots are. So I hope I've answered all your questions, and thank you again for the opportunity to talk about my favorite birds.
Well, we appreciate you so much. Would you like to leave our audience with a little preview of your newest publication that you're working on?
I will, 1 second. This is a mock-up cover. I'm not, can you see that?
Ah, the Spix macaw.
Yes, just a minute. Let me.
So beautiful.
It's my next book written with Professor Luis Fabio Silveira, and it's all about the 4 species of blue macaws. And it's about a 500-page volume covering every aspect, and it should be published by September this year.
Well, we would love to invite you back when that happens
Yes,
and
I would
help
love
launch
to.
your book. All right.
Yes, I would love to speak to you again about that.
Yes. Well, I don't know if anyone else has questions. Kira?
I think we had covered mostly everything. But then if there are any questions that come up, I know that people will be watching this in the recorded version as well. And so if there are any questions that get emailed to us or that are in our YouTube, I can go ahead and forward those to Rosemary
Of
and
course.
then
Yeah.
respond to everybody. But yeah, again, thank you so much. This was an incredible presentation, and it's just so fun to learn about such a niche area of parrots. And yeah, we would love to have you back when you have your book published. And I
That would
think
be
also doing
marvelous.
the conservational talk would be really interesting as well.
And thank you for all you do at the Gabriel Foundation. You are helping so many parrots and parrot owners.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you to our participants and our audience today. Please share um, our information and access to the webinars with anyone, bird clubs you think will love it. And we can continue to all make an impact. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Absolutely.
All,
Thank you.
all right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'll have this posted on YouTube later this week, and we hope that you enjoyed. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.